Call the meeting to order at 5:35. We'll start with roll call and attendance. Nick Shuey, Josh Muchard,
Present.
Jessica Evenson,
Here.
Todd Shiver,
Here.
Gary Epp,
Here.
Chase Tibbles,
Here.
John Dehan.
Yes, sir.
It's noted that Serafini, Joseph Bryant, and Brittany Wold are absent. Patrick Sampson as well. I know you're here. We all knew you were here. I didn't want to state the obvious, Ed. Go on to agenda approval. Take a couple minutes to go ahead and look at the agenda. Nick?
I motion to approve the agenda for November 19th, 2014.
There's been a motion made. Is there a second? Josh Muchard.
So good.
Who's second? Okay, so is there any discussion on that matter? Seeing none, I'll move to a vote. All those in favor of approving the agenda as is? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 6 to 1 to 0. Go on to approval of the minutes. Minutes from the November 12th meeting. Nick?
I have a question about the attendance. It says Brittany was present, but the meeting had already dismissed. She wasn't able to vote on any matters. Would that be included in this?
Brittany comes in late.
Yeah, Brittany has a class, or she gets off work at 5:30,
She comes in late.
and she comes in late.
Are we gonna note that in the minutes every time?
But my point was, the meeting had already been dismissed, so the meeting was over and she was
Oh, when she got here.
when she got
Oh,
here.
yeah, she should.
Well, I would say that would be an absence, but I would not say that would be an unexcused absence, because she arrived within her normal time of arriving, within 15 minutes of getting out of work, and we just had a super short meeting, so.
I'm just saying for minutes' sake.
Yeah, minute's sake, yes.
Excuse.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion pieces on the minutes? Josh,
I move to approve the minutes
as amended.
as amended.
Is there a second to approve the minutes as amended?
Second.
Chase Tibbles seconds. Any discussion?
Really quick question. Just do I have to abstain if I wasn't here? Or do I still approve?
Yeah, you need to abstain.
I do abstain.
Yeah, because you would have you didn't know actually what happened. Any discussion? Okay, we can move to a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended by moving Brittany Wold to the excused section. Alright, motion's carried. Alright, go down to reports. I have no reports at this time. Ed?
I don't know if it qualifies as a report or not, but I went to the Budget and Finance Committee meeting yesterday. They did approve all of the supplemental requests. There are also the universities kicking around ideas for tuition increases next year, and they're floating the idea of a 3% S&A fee increase. So I'm just putting that out for information. I'll do a more thorough budget analysis, and at the latest, when we come back from winter break, we'll start talking about finances and what we might want to do budget-wise or fee increase-wise.
Alright, we can move to section 6, public comment. Is there any public comment at this time? Seeing no public comment, we can move down to old business, which there's nothing. So we can move on to new business, subsection 8, and subsection A.I. We need to vote to consider supplemental request 1504, the Oregon Students of Color Conference for amount of $600. As a reminder, we tabled this issue last meeting. We wanted to get some more information on this conference before we decided to vote whether we were going to consider the request, hear the request, if that makes sense. So, I had not received any information on this.
That was my question. Do we know anything more than we did last week?
I don't know.
Is there anybody here tonight?
Like, recognize the gallery. Anybody here for the Students of Color Conference? Go ahead, Nick.
I motion to table supplemental request form 1504 indefinitely.
Do we need to do that, or do we just need to, if there's no?
We can just vote
no
to-
decision?
Yeah, we can make a motion.
Oh, we do have to vote to, okay.
Yeah, we have to vote on.
We have to vote.
Well, we could vote to table it, or we could vote to not consider it. So those are our options. Or we could table it if we would like, so choose. So those are, but
Definitely.
May I ask a question? Do we have to do that motion
yes.
first? What did they tell us last week? Sorry, I wasn't here. I'm just looking at it and
There was nobody
there was
here.
nothing. Okay.
And they withdrew a similar request from SAS.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
says they were due to ESC due to being late.
And they did like no fundraising or anything.
And no one came in to speak.
Mm-mm.
It was just a request. Okay.
So there is a motion on the table. We would need a second.
Second.
So the current motion is to table it indefinitely. Do we have any discussion on whether we would want to do that or not? That means we would.
So my reasoning behind that is it creates precedence in the future to, if we're going to consider requests that come in late, then someone else could say in the future, well, you heard this one late, why won't you hear ours? So I think it's just setting precedence for the year of how this committee is going to operate.
I think. Oh, can we discuss stuff? I think if we're trying to set a precedent, then we should just move to dismiss it if they're not here and it was late. Otherwise, it's just going to be on the agenda.
Point of clarification, what do you, when you say table indefinitely, we don't have a definite time that we're going to table it for, or it's going to be completely definite?
That's a nice way of saying we're not going to consider.
It won't ever come up in discussion for the meeting.
So we're,
But Jessica's point is if we want to be more, less political,
If we want to have something with some teeth on
yeah.
it. John, did you have something?
I was gonna say, we say we deny the request.
Yeah.
So the current motion is to table it indefinitely. Is there any more discussion on that? We have to vote on that before we can move on. Okay, seeing none, move to a vote. All those in favor of tabling supplemental request 1504 indefinitely? All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed?
I guess I'm opposed.
Just on the wording of it. Just on the wording of it, I agree, but.
3. Okay. Motion passes 4 to 3 to 0. Supplemental request 1504 has been tabled indefinitely. Moving on to subsection III. Supplemental request 1505 for the CWU Challenge Course student wages of $20,000. Is that a presentation? Is that?
Presentation.
Yep.
Yeah, would like to hear from me?
Yep.
Presentation.
It's on your desktop there.
Oh, it
I
is.
loaded it earlier,
One-
sorry.
one and
Wow,
two.
who's
It
gonna
should-
touch on my machine?
Thank you.
You have 10 minutes.
You can come on up.
Great, thank you.
I'll get out of your way here.
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, thank you. My name is Kevin Hopper. I am the Assistant Director of Recreation for Outdoor Pursuits and Rentals. And this is Melissa Robertson. Unfortunately, we're both feeling under the weather. Melissa's losing her voice, so I'll be presenting. If you have questions, feel free to ask, interrupt me at any time. And if you have stuff afterwards, if you would skip to the next page. Thanks, Ed. You automatically got nominated. I appreciate that.
Just say quick.
Okay, so the reason we're coming forward and ask for a large amount of money, I'm fairly new to the position. I've been in the position only for a few months. And in looking through the budget and budget propositions, which I have copies of if you have questions later, there's some funny things that happened. Most importantly, we're growing the programs out of the challenge course. There's more and more interest and activity out there. And so to support that, we needed to open up a coordinator position through the climbing and challenge course, which we did. However, the way in which that's funded doesn't seem sustainable right now, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So right now, we're in a position where the rec fee is supporting us at $27,000 a year for the next 2 years until we can grow revenue enough to support ourselves, right? As part of it, this is similar to what's happening across campus with the RCA model. But technically, we can support the position through the rec bond, but we can't, fund the challenge course directly itself. So that's what you see up there. We have to essentially in 2 years, we need to increase our revenues where when that $27,000 leaves, we're creating that revenue ourselves. We click for it. So here's the options. Our highest amount of revenue that we've ever created at the challenge course so far is $40,000 a year. That then bumps us up to $67,000 a year of revenue that we'd be making. So in 2 years, that's a total of 62% increase in revenue. Pretty big number. It means over the next 2 years, 31% increase in revenue each year. I have 2 options for this problem, right? I can, in the way I see it, anyways, you might have something I don't, but I can hire temps and raise costs, or raise the prices, that 31% that I need to make to be able to pull that off, right? The other thing, and the reason I'm here, is I feel like since we support student groups on campus, right, and the way the RCM model is set up, S&A could support us for student employment wages, and therefore reducing the costs at which I have to raise prices on student groups on campus, and enabling them to have access to the challenge course in a more reasonable way. And then all that would be left with that support would me to continue to grow my revenue at a more reasonable rate, which is around 10% over the next 2 years to that total of 20% revenue that would be left in those 2 years. And then we would be sustainable on our own with your support, continuing as we go on. But that would be something that would be projected at the quadrennium, right? So if you click for me. So the future with that is this would be something where we would want this on an annual basis, right? The reason I'm asking for it now is because if we don't have the support now, it makes the future harder for us, right? Coming back at the quadrennium, we're going to have to remake this pitch, right? And we'll have being said, like, well, we weren't supported in the first place. Melissa's position actually ends at that year, so we would have to create enough revenue to then keep her in limbo for another year to hope that that quadrennium projection passes. And then if not, we would have to find some way to either keep her around or lose that position. So in my opinion, showing support now shows support for not only student groups on campus having access to this resource, but students who work for us, several of which have shown up tonight, providing them both opportunities to be active out on the course and gain professional skills for them in the future. That's pretty much it. You can click forward, but thank you. Questions? I'm trying to keep it short because I know there'll be a lot of questions. It's a big number. So.
All right, we open up to questions.
How many students do you employ?
We just did our new recruitment. We have about 18, between 15 and 18.
Yeah, I'd say 2, maybe even between 10 and
2
15.
of which are student manager positions. So they do all our scheduling and help us with trainings and advice and stuff like that. Recreation as a whole is the biggest employer of students on campus.
Our projections for how much we spend in student wages is $14,000, and last year we spent $21,000 in our students.
Yeah.
How many of your students are minimum wage currently?
All of them.
Okay, so with the increase in January that's coming, is it accounting for that new?
That's one of the things we're projecting. So our budget projections this year, to make things happen, I don't know. I wasn't here, so I don't know. but the student wages were reduced. One of the things we're trying to do with this projection is keep those student wages raised. So in line with those projections of increasing minimum wage as well as keeping our students out there and employed and working.
And we truly believe that we, empower some of the better students, and like from the skills that they're learning through the challenge course, they're able to get jobs other places and transfer their skills in the challenge course to other students, as well as all of OPR staff, which we think will help them out.
Yeah.
Are you currently receiving any student activity fees?
For the challenge course, no. Outdoor pursuits and rentals, which is a separate budget line, does receive a little bit. It's less than 10% of the budget. I think it's $12,000 annually.
You mentioned if you got this $20,000, one of the things you would be able to do is to keep the student fee for the challenge course reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mean that you'll keep it at the same level it is instead of you're raising out
Well, so when the challenge course was originally projected, there was a set of fees that was projected with that in which we would be sustainable. Now for some reason, I don't know why, the person running the course before us didn't use that fee structure at all, and we're way off, like not in the same ballpark even. And so we would have to raise prices on student groups slightly, but our goal would be to more like keep that in line with inflation rather than raise it where we would be pricing student groups out.
We have a price sheet we could grab you some, but it's for a student group it's about $125 to $200 depending on the course, and then it goes up. So there's student groups, then there's CWU faculty staff prices, and there's community prices. So all the prices with the student groups we would keep at pretty much our cost. We're not really making money on student groups. We want to be there for the students. So with the $20,000, we'd be able to keep those prices. We're not really making money. We're just being able to still have those student prices at a reasonable cost.
It might be nice, because we consider this our next meeting.
Yeah.
It might be nice to see your current price structure and then what the new price structure would be if you
Absolutely.
receive these funds.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can send that to you.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
can I keep raising my hand?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you guys request a quadrennium budget in the last
In the
2
last
years ago?
cycle,
Yeah.
no, I don't believe so. But Nick,
I
you could
actually-
probably have contacts for that.
I actually did a little bit of information before coming to the meeting, and it looked like they requested for challenge course operations $69,286.
Because I was on the committee then,
Yeah.
we had listened to so many, you gotta understand it's a blur now, but I just remember us not funding that, but I don't remember the specifics.
I do remember that now,
You
actually. Bob filled me into that when I came into the
Yeah.
position. So that was asked for by Ryan, who was the coordinator of OPR at the time. And he was denied because in his original asking for money to build the challenge course, he said that we would be sustainable on our own, right? Which is part of that
that's
money
right.
where
That's right.
yeah, which is part of that reason why I said, he projected a certain numbers and then didn't use those certain numbers. And so we're operating at something.
So
that
you're
wasn't
kind of
projected.
making the same offer here, though. You're saying that, you'll get these funds and then have them for a couple of years, and then you'll be self-sustaining once.
No, not really. So I'm not making the same offer because I don't
Don't
believe
make
that.
promises you can't keep.
Yeah, I wouldn't make the same
And that was the problem.
mistake he
That
made,
was-
in my opinion.
That was
Yeah.
it. That
Yeah.
was the problem, that the committee, there was institutional memory on the committee. Remember, the original thing was they were going to be
Sure.
independent.
Sure, and I found out about that after I had first had
Yes.
this thought, and it scares me, right?
So,
The reason being, what I'm asking for, and just to be clear,
yeah,
we'll be back, if we get this, we'll be back next year to do the same thing at the quadrennium. We'll project to make that like a sustaining fee
And
kind of thing.
we are sustainable with our equipment, our insurance and all that stuff with the revenue that we have. What we can't afford is to pay our students unless we significantly increase the cost of the programs, which would minimize
I think when he originally projected that it was based off models that are very commercial, right? Like I said, we could go that route, right? We could hire temps, and we could have the coordinator, and we could run a business. But I think it would limit access to student groups. So I hope we don't have to go that route, but I'm hoping that with your support, we can make it a little more sustainable for
That's good.
students.
Thanks for doing the research, Nick.
Yeah.
Can I continue?
Sure.
It looks like there's another
I'll
question.
go after
John.
you.
So I'm just curious, because we had the same question about the tennis courts when we funded the lights last year too.
Oh, yeah.
The weather here is not conducive for an outdoor course year round, obviously.
Correct.
How many months, or what are your operating months usually?
Yeah, so we operate fall, spring, and summer. Summer being our highest quarter, and then in the winter time, we are looking to move our events inside, right? So we're using the climbing wall inside and reserving court space and that kind of thing to keep our students employed and running more low element type team building stuff, but with the climbing wall, we can't have that high element aspect. But it's something that us being our first few months, we're still figuring out. But yes, the winter is slower for the course itself. However, for employees, not so much.
Okay.
Right?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Did you?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
Yeah.
stealing.
You got
Yeah,
figure out another way
it's
to word it now. I got off
I'm sorry.
I
off
was just
track.
curious,
Yeah.
what are like the rough numbers and how many students use the challenge course in like fall and spring?
Yeah. Do you know what you're saying?
In terms of just student use.
Like total
Yeah,
numbers
like how
coming
much
through.
use it gets from the students.
I would say 150 to 200 just this last quarter, because we had multiple groups from the Center for Leadership and Community Engagement, the freshman programs, so probably more than that. I'd say probably
And
closer to
Wellington
250 or
Wildfire.
300.
Yeah, I would say we get that number alone running through our course during Wellington Wildfire, and then that number again coming out on individual programs.
Sorry, so is there a way you could bring those numbers next week
Totally.
also in addition to the budget
Can you-
numbers?
Yeah.
Keep notes on that.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure.
So if we were to grant you this 20,000 right
Yeah.
now, and then you're coming back next year for more, how are you sure that that number's not going to increase? You're not going to say, okay, well now this time we need 25, or this time we need 30 or 35.
You know, I would not say I wouldn't say that, right? Because it's,
Right.
like I said, I'm new in the position.
Right.
But I don't think we would. And the reason being, based off historical context, and I have the budget up here if you'd like to see them, but based off historical context of the budget, right? That's what we made our $30,000 or $40,000 off of. That's what we spent in student
So if
wages.
you're expecting things to stay in the ballpark.
Well, right, because when we run the programs, it's based off like how many people come through.
Right.
We get that amount of revenue and this much expense, right? And so I think where we're at, if we stay the same, you know, there's room for us to grow
Right.
other places, but the student wages would stay about the same because it's kind of a fixed cost.
Because I'm just looking at like in the future, long term, it'd be kind of unfortunate if we granted you the 20,000 now, and then you come back next year and say, oh, we need 30, or it's not going to work, and we end up not granting it,
You
and
know,
then
in-
things like go down.
In the 2 years, I don't see that.
Right.
Right? I think we're fairly safe. But what it is, these next 2 years is a snapshot for us.
Right.
So that by the time we get to that quadrennium projection, we have an opportunity to say like, yes, this is working. It's sustainable for us. We want to make this a fee. If we don't have that now, we're kind of shooting from the
Right.
hip again. We're right back to where we are now.
And
Good
the
deal.
$20,000 is for the student wages. That it's like the bare minimum of what we need. Anything that like we can pay our students more than that with more programming, that we'll get money in for revenue. So we can kind of balance that out. But the $20,000 is just like the bare
Right.
bones of what we need.
It's a
to
cash
stop the
injection to
program.
get us moving as a business.
And then
Sounds
continue
good.
it, just because I mean, like our student managers are doing a lot, not on the course,
Right.
just managing, and so we don't get funds for that. So like if we have a program, we can kind of counteract the money that we're getting in with the student wages, but when they're doing
So you don't see any like projection of like hiring 10 new students at like one
And
time or anything? Or
even if we did that,
You'd be able to
we'd
cover
be
it.
able to
Gotcha.
get the programs to pay for that.
Because the majority is the student managers, right?
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Josh?
So just a point of clarification, so
Sure.
basically, if, we can't get the $20,000 in funding,
Mm-hmm.
that would mean that, for the next 2 years, you have to raise prices by, 31% each year, and then if it is granted, then
Well,
you'd only have to raise it by 10% each year.
yeah, I would say not necessarily raise prices, right? Majority of it would be coming from raising prices, right? We're still going to do what we can do to increase revenue. But what I'm saying is like a 10% increase in revenue is easiest for us to create with new programming and new ideas, stuff like that. A 31% increase in revenue is really hard to do that. Have to raise prices at some point, right? A 10% is more manageable for me to try and raise prices less and do more new programming.
And we want to be here for the students, and what we're worried about too is if we it's too much for the students, and then all we're doing is getting corporate groups because we need the revenue, that we're no longer part of the student body at that point, and we might as well just have a separate course that's not even affiliated with Central, and we don't want that to happen.
So I was gonna say, I can imagine if prices have to skyrocket because of, budget issues, then I
Yeah.
can just only imagine the demand going down. Because
Right. Well, and we would be doing things like chasing Boeing and bigger companies in Seattle, as opposed to trying to get the cycling club and stuff like that going out and having team experiences. So, just because it'd be unfortunately more worth our time and keeping the program running.
Nick? John?
I've never done the challenge course, but doesn't ROTC use it quite a bit, or is
Yeah, a lot of different programs use
so are
it.
they do they fund it anyway, or are they just like a big big user or big supporter?
ROTC does not fund it unless they go through us
Oh, okay.
with one of our programs.
They're the same as any student group on campus.
Oh, okay. I just
right?
wanted to see
They're
them out
given the
there all the-
student rate, but yeah,
And
they
we-
don't necessarily support us for funding.
And we would love to have you all out there. And if with this increase, if you gave us the $20,000, we would have more programs for students. And we would have you all out there. And it would be our privilege to have you all on the course.
If you'd like a demo, come see us.
Yeah. And also like events like Wellington Wildfire cut costs completely on those bigger events. So it's definitely be good students.
At this time, are there any further questions?
So just to re-clarify, you'd like to see the cost of our programs now, and then what they would be with the support, right? And then some usage numbers, right? Cool. We'd be happy to provide that. Yeah. Email those to you. Be good.
Sure. Yeah, I'll give you the community.
Great.
Cool.
Well, thank you very much for your time,
Thank you.
and let us know if we can give any further help.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you.
Hope you feel better.
Alrighty. Go on to subsection 9, communications received. I have not received any communications. Ed has not received any communications. Move to section 10, public comment second call. Is there any public comment? Seeing none. I'd like to remind everybody that our next meeting is December 3rd here in Circ 301 at 5:30. We are having pictures taken, so please arrive as soon as you can. That's the next one. We do not have, not next week. I will not be here next week.
No.
And yeah, so this time I go, John.
So on the 3rd, so when they bring their numbers and their projections, are we voting that night, or are we just discussing and voting the one after?
So yes, we would discuss and then vote.
And then vote. Okay.
Yeah, at that night. Or if we needed more information, we could always table
Sounds
it.
good.
But then that would be tabling it until January. So, Nick.
I just have an announcement to make. I found an 8th member to be on the Service and Activities Committee this year, so they'll be joining us in the December 3rd meeting.
We have a name on that?
After the picture.
Renee Blanc.
All right. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Nick, should we?
So moved.
Is there a second? Just Stevenson. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried. Meeting is adjourned at 6:05 p.m.